basically Git started as like a way, it started just writing a load of scripts in order to manage these things easier, to automate stuff. He never started it really as a proper version control system, but it just sort of got like steam, and then someone took over the development of the project. Now it's like a proper fully fledged thing. The main thing about Git to know is that it's distributed, and I'll draw a diagram to show you what the difference is between distributed and centralized, so like version control. So this is like your centralized model, which most of you will probably be familiar with, which is like you have your repository over here. So this is centralized, which would be like SVN or CVS or something like that. So you have your repository, and then all your developers, let's call this person Alice, and Bob, and
Andy.
you can't have Andy, it's got to be a C. Clive.
Oh.
Alice, Bob and Clive. And they basically have checkouts on their machines, the repository, and any time, like, say Bob has done some code that he wants Clive to have, he has to do a commit, which is a network operation back to the repository, and then Clive has to do an update to bring it back down from the repository. So everything goes through this basically. And the other thing is like all of the history of the source, all of your commits and everything are stored here, right? So if Alice wants to find out like what was the most recent commit, or what are the most recent 5 commits that have happened in my repository, he has to send a network operation to the repository and has to send him back the data, and it's really slow and rubbish. And it also means that all your like commits and your change history are stored at like one place, which is a central point of failure. So that's a centralized model.
And would that server be a single server?
Yeah.
It would have to be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's one place like where the repository is, and all these checkouts, they just have like checkouts. They're just like code and some metadata. They don't have any history or anything about commits or anything about like what's happened in the project. It's just like a local checkout. So if you want to find out what's happened in the project in the past, you have to go and communicate with the server. With distributed model, it's like there's no canonical repository like this. So you have Alice, you have Bob, you have Clive, and you might have Dave as well, and they all have their own versions of the repository, right? And each version of the repository contains everything. So it contains all the branches, like all the tags, all the history, and all the commit information ever for all of the project. Which means if Alice wants to find out what's the difference between my current branch and this other branch, it's a local operation. They don't need to go to a server, and it's massively quicker. And so like the workflow here is if Alice wants Bob to have some of her code, she pushes it up and Bob has to pull it. In this situation, if Alice has done some code that Dave wants, he can just pull from Alice, because Alice has got a repository and Dave's got a repository. And if Alice doesn't want Bob and Clive to have that, but she only wants Dave to have that, then only Dave needs to pull it. So you can have different versions of repositories all in all different places, and it allows for like really awesome collaboration, especially if you have like sub-teams of like people. So Alice might have a sub-team of 4 people below her, and people might pull and push to Alice, but she doesn't need to pull and push to everyone else in the main team until she's ready.